Okay, let's unpack this. What we have today, it's not just the story of a missing child found 5 years later. It's a terrifying look at how certain systemic pressures, poverty, crime, just sheer desperation, can be, well, weaponized.
Weaponized by political ambition.
Exactly, to the point where the tragedy itself becomes this calculated tool for immense political and financial gain.
That's a powerful summary, and it's precisely what our source material reveals. Our mission today is to take a true deep dive into the stack of investigative notes, interview transcripts, and specific observations compiled by reporter Henry Parker.
Right.
This is a sprawling, really chilling conspiracy that touches on political corruption, sophisticated chemical manipulation, and the forced gentrification of entire towns.
And the fuse that ignites this whole thing is just stunning reappearance of 10-year-old Daniel Linwood.
In Hobbs County, New York.
He was gone for 5 long years.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine this scene, right? The family, the community, the media circus surrounding this joyous, miraculous return. The sources describe it as just this overwhelming public relief.
Oh, completely.
But almost immediately, Henry Parker notes the first hint of something deeply sinister lurking just beneath that joy, something that immediately turns this miracle into a giant question mark.
And that detail, the one that instantly screams red flag, it isn't what the boy experienced, but what he didn't. Daniel returns without a single scratch, not a cut, not a bruise. He looks as though he just took a 5-year vacation, but he has absolutely no memory, zero of those missing years.
And this isn't just like a psychological block from trauma.
Not at all. This is a total, profound eraser of a huge chunk of his childhood. And it forces Henry to ask the immediate critical question: what happened during those 5 years that someone went to such extraordinary lengths to make sure he could never, ever remember it, and how did they pull it off?
And to really understand the scope of this conspiracy, you have to understand the environment that Daniel returned to.
Indeed. You have to understand Hobbs County, New York.
So let's start there, the geography, the history of Hobbs County. Before Daniel Linwood's disappearance, our sources describe this area in really stark terms.
They call it an ingrown toenail.
An ingrown toenail, yeah. Situated awkwardly between these far wealthier, pristine communities like Tarrytown and Chappaqua, Hobbs County wasn't sharing in that suburban dream at all. It was drowning.
It was completely drowning in instability. And the statistics are, they're horrifying, and they are absolutely central to understanding the political opportunity that Senator Talbot eventually seized.
Okay.
The sources pull from FBI reports. They show that in the year right before Daniel was kidnapped, Hobbs County, which had this tiny population of just over 10,372 residents to be exact,
Oh, wow.
it reported 16 murders, 5 rapes, and 2 kidnappings.
16 murders in a town of 10,000 people. That is an apocalyptic level of violent crime for a small suburban town.
It is, and Henry's sources contextualize that. They say if you were to extrapolate that crime rate to a large metro area like New York City, you would be looking at 12,000 murders a year.
Unbelievable.
Hobbs County was, and this is a quote, literally killing itself through internal decay. It created this perfect, vulnerable target. Residents were living under constant threat, and the infrastructure was just collapsing.
That just points a picture of utter devastation, right?
Yeah.
Total vulnerability and clearly political neglect.
For sure.
But the town Daniel returned to 5 years later was dramatically transformed. The narrative emphasizes this recent cleansing process, which was directly fueled by a tremendous influx of state funds and what the sources describe as pricey renovations just everywhere you looked.
And this change wasn't subtle. It was immediate and drastic. Last year, the town only reported 4 murders, 1 rape, and crucially, 0 kidnappings.
So the violence had been, surgically reduced?
Exactly. Surgically. And this new stability wasn't just physical. It had a colossal economic impact. We see property values just soaring. A 3-bedroom house that was struggling to sell for under $250,000 just 5 years ago was suddenly commanding $750,000.
Oh, wow.
This transformation, driven by massive state investment and the elimination of visible crime, created the foundation for a very specific political message, that of the heroic savior.
So the town is essentially a brand new, polished product.
Okay.
But what about the family at the center of this engineered miracle? The Linwood family dynamic, specifically involving Daniel's mother, Shelley, is strange right from the outset.
Deeply strange. Shelley Linwood is, of course, relieved, but Henry Parker notes this really unnerving behavior. She's obsessed with projecting a facade of normalcy and stability, almost aggressively so. And she seems strangely unconcerned, even actively dismissive, about the lack of a thorough police investigation into Daniel's return. When a child comes back after 5 years, any normal parent would be demanding answers, demanding to know who the captors were, where he was kept, why he was released.
But Shelley isn't asking any of those questions.
No. Henry notes her almost forced contentment. She says, "We're just so glad to have Daniel back. It's like a wave crashing over you when you're ready to burst into flame." She prioritizes the family's healing and the appearance of safety over the pursuit of justice.
And that prioritization is what signals to Henry that there's a deep, dark compromise being protected here.
And the effects on the younger children, James, who's 8, and Tasha, who's 6, they're striking.
Yeah.
James, in particular, he vocalizes this profound disruption. He has the honest confusion of an outsider who just doesn't understand the sudden appearance of the stranger. He asks, "My brother, I thought he was, like, stolen or something."
He doesn't get how a sibling who vanished 5 years ago without a trace can just reappear.
Right, without any explanation or any signs of a struggle. That emotional distance and confusion, even within the immediate family, it just highlights how absolute the fracture was. Daniel's identity had become a ghost story to his own siblings.
And as this family trauma unfolds, the story immediately steps into the political and media arena, focusing on this ruthless scramble for the exclusive interview.
Which brings us to the rivalry between Henry Parker at the New York Gazette and his main competitor, Paulina Cole, at the New York Dispatch.
Cole is portrayed in the sources as just fiercely competitive, utterly ruthless in her pursuit of the story. She wasn't just offering an interview, was she?
No. She was offering the Linwoods major media deals, film rights, publishing contracts, effectively turning them into a brand name for survival.
Selling their trauma for maximum profit.
Exactly.
Wow.
Cole was operating on pure transaction. But Henry secured the exclusive because the family ultimately felt they could trust him, perhaps believing he would treat Daniel's story with more respect than Cole's sensationalist approach.
But this exclusive immediately draws the powerful attention of Senator Gray Talbot. And that's the moment the investigation spirals out of local interest.
Talbot, the self-described savior of suburbia. He's famous for intervening after Daniel's kidnapping and forcing the systemic change in Hobbs County. The sources note he reportedly contributed close to $1 million of his own coffers to aid that initial anti-crime effort, painting him as a hero.
But his involvement goes far beyond simple philanthropy. He makes a point of personally vetting Henry Parker.
Which is an extraordinary move for a sitting senator. He intercepts Henry right before the crucial interview.
And he sternly admonishes Henry to be respectful. Talbot explicitly frames this story not as a tabloid story to be exploited, but as a chance to help mend the family's hole and cement the success of the Hobbs revitalization.
It's a classic political maneuver, isn't it? It acts as both a compliment flattering Henry by making him feel like a trusted gatekeeper.
And an implicit threat. Making sure Henry understands that the official savior of suburbia narrative has to be preserved at all costs.
And that's the critical, chilling question Henry immediately grapples with. Why is a powerful politician with national ambitions personally vetting a single reporter for a local human interest story? The implication is clear. Daniel's return isn't a natural miracle.
No.
It's a crucial, pre-planned part of Talbot's political success story. And that narrative has to be preserved because it's the foundation upon which he built all his political capital.
The narrative of the perfect safe town needed Daniel to return, safe and sound, to validate the entire project. Okay, so moving beyond the politics of the perfect town, we get into segment 2. And this is where we dive into the medical mystery at the heart of this crime, the amnesia connection.
Right. Henry's interview with Daniel, or Danny, it confirms the total memory loss of those missing 5 years. Danny genuinely doesn't remember old school friends, people like Cliffy Willis or Ashley Whitney.
But the interview provides Henry with 2 absolutely critical pieces of information.
It does. First, the physical detail. Daniel is a diabetic. His mother has to routinely prepare and administer his insulin using a specific kit: the pen, the cylindrical vial, the rubbing alcohol, and the gauze pad. This dependency is a non-negotiable fact of Daniel's existence. It makes him unique.
And the second clue is purely linguistic. It's a subconscious slip that Henry immediately latches onto.
Exactly. When Daniel talks about worrying about his siblings' safety, he refers to my brothers, plural.
But he only has one younger brother, James.
Right. So Henry deduces immediately that Daniel bonded deeply with another child during his captivity, viewing them as a plural brother or a companion. This confirms Daniel wasn't isolated. He was part of a group, maybe even being held in some kind of structured environment.
So these two clues, diabetes and a potential second child, they immediately send Henry searching the cold cases for parallels.
Which leads him to the horrifying case of Michelle Oliveira.
Michelle was a 9-year-old girl who disappeared from Meriden, Connecticut, 7 years before Daniel. She reappeared after almost 4 years missing.
With the exact same characteristics as Daniel. Total, profound amnesia of her missing years, and no physical signs of abuse, no cuts, no scrapes. The mechanism of her disappearance and return was identical.
And the parallel deepens thanks to Amanda Davies. She's Henry's former partner who works at the Legal Aid Society. And this is where Amanda takes a massive personal and professional risk to help Henry with this investigation.
A huge risk. She accessed protected medical records, leveraging her legal aid status to get the details on Michelle. This was extremely dangerous given Talbot's political reach and just how high-profile these cases were.
But her dedication pays off.
It does. It confirms the essential link. Michelle Oliveira is also a diabetic.
That seals it. That is far beyond coincidence. Now we have a specific serious medical condition linking two randomly kidnapped children across 2 different towns separated by hundreds of miles.
So Henry immediately follows the medical chain, and that leads him to the definitive common denominator, Dr. Dmitry Petrovsky.
Dr. Petrovsky.
A pediatrician. He was the delivering physician and long-term treating doctor for both Daniel Linwood and Michelle Oliveira. Both children were born at the Yardley Medical Center in Hobbs County.
That's the smoking gun.
That is the smoking gun. It proves that someone was actively screening specific children based on their shared medical background, their location of birth, and their need for insulin. Petrovsky wasn't just a doctor. He was the source of the highly specific target list. He gave the conspirators the perfect leverage point.
To really understand the horror of the crime, though, Henry needed to understand how the memory theft worked.
Right.
This takes him to consult a physician, a Dr. Brenneman, about the mechanism of long-term amnesia, and we get introduced to a horrifying biological explanation: Korsakoff syndrome.
And this is where we really need to slow down and unpack the science, because the specific method it's ingenious and deeply cynical.
Okay.
Korsakoff syndrome is a degenerative brain condition. Its known cause is a severe, prolonged lack of thiamine.
Thiamine. That's vitamin B1.
Vitamin B1. And it's absolutely crucial because it helps the body metabolize fats and carbohydrates and turn them into usable energy for the brain and the nervous system. The human body doesn't produce it naturally, so we have to absorb it through our diet.
So things like bread, meat, green vegetables.
Exactly. Without adequate thiamine, specific areas of the brain involved in memory formation and learning, especially the mammillary bodies and the thalamus, they begin to atrophy. They begin to break down.
And why is this connected to their diabetes? How does that fit in?
Because the source material confirms that diabetics are already known to be more susceptible to low thiamine levels. It's because of metabolic stress and potential absorption issues. So the kidnappers didn't need complicated, traceable, psychoactive drugs.
Yeah.
They simply needed to manipulate the children's necessary diabetic diets, controlling their nutrition and preventing them from absorbing necessary thiamine over a long period.
So by controlling the children's food, they could chemically induce a specific type of memory loss.
Precisely. This would induce something called anterograde amnesia, a blackout episode that prevents the formation of new memories during the captivity period.
But crucially, it doesn't necessarily erase existing skills or personalities entirely.
Right. That's why Daniel can remember his younger brother James, but cannot recall a single day of the past 5 years. They were essentially creating temporary, reversible brain damage. It allowed them to train or use the children for months or years without fear that they could ever report details of their surroundings, their captors, or their activities.
It is the biologically precise method for stealing silence. They create a blank slate for 5 years, but kept the body healthy enough for the children to function.
And the evidence that the children were more than just hidden away, that they were actively trained during this amnesia, is confirmed by the Michelle Oliveira case and her bizarre specialized skill imprint.
Let's elaborate on that. What exactly happened when Michelle returned?
Michelle, who had previously only had some basic, sporadic violin lessons, suddenly demonstrated mastery upon her return. The sources highlight her former teacher, a woman named Delilah Lancaster, who was just utterly stunned.
Okay.
Michelle was able to play a complex sonata. a piece Lancaster confirmed was far, far beyond her technical ability and was not in her curriculum workbook. When Lancaster asked her where she learned it, Michelle genuinely didn't know. The memory of the training, the context, it was gone.
That must have been incredibly chilling for the teacher.
It was. Delilah Lancaster was, quote, chilled to the bone. She said that playing the piece made her feel cold and sleepless. She recognized that the skill was an imprint on her brain. The intricate moves, the muscle memory, it was all etched unconsciously during her missing years.
Wait, so they needed the children to learn complex tasks, but specifically not remember the context.
Yeah.
How does that neurological separation even work?
Well, it speaks to the two different types of memory. You have explicit memory, that's the conscious recall of facts, events, and context, and that's what the thiamine deprivation was targeting.
Right.
But you also have implicit memory, which includes procedural memory, muscle memory, and that is much more resilient to the kind of brain changes induced by Korsakoff syndrome. So they were teaching the children complex skills, repetition after repetition, that were absorbed directly into their procedural pathways.
The implication is just terrifying. If they were teaching them advanced musical skills, what else were they training them for? Espionage. Highly specific commercial tasks. They needed them to learn complex skills, but absolutely forbid them from remembering who taught them or why.
It implies a long-term plan where these children, once restored to health and memory, could deploy these specialized skills at some point in the future, years after their abduction, maybe without ever even realizing the origin of their sudden talent.
Which brings us to segment 3, where Henry begins to connect these medical dots to the political ambition, building the entire architecture of the conspiracy. And we have to start with Raymond Benjamin.
The muscle.
The muscle, yeah. The physical threat who linked the local crime to the larger network.
And Henry had personal, terrifying experience with him. Benjamin threatened him with a lit cigarette burn, and later, in this just grotesque demonstration of power, forced Henry to witness Dr. Petrovsky's murder.
Unbelievable.
Benjamin's identity is confirmed as an ex-convict who served time at Attica, specifically during the infamous 1971 riot. That fact, confirmed by a thin scar on his cheek and his preference for Chesterfield cigarettes, it establishes his deep roots in organized violence.
And he wasn't some external mercenary. He was a Hobbs County native.
Crucially, yes. Old journal news articles confirmed he was a local native, and he was employed by Powers Construction,
Talbot's key contractor.
This means the political machine was using local violence rooted in the very community it claimed to be cleansing. Benjamin owned the Huntley Terrace house, where Henry and Amanda were briefly held, where Petrovsky was killed, and where Benjamin later torched the house to destroy all the evidence. He was the one sealing the secrets through literal fire.
And this house leads Henry directly to the people running the active kidnapping operation, the Reeds.
Robert and Elaine Reed. They were subletting the Huntley Terrace house from Benjamin. And the evidence strongly suggested they were holding a new, third victim, Caroline Toomey, or Girl X.
Who was also a diabetic.
Of course. The conspirators were actively seeking out new targets to continue the cycle.
And the proof of this recent active kidnapping comes from a small, almost innocuous receipt Henry recovered before the fire, right?
Yeah, a receipt for dollhouse accessories from a local store called Toys for Fun in White Plains. And it was dated less than a week before Benjamin burned the property down.
And Henry didn't stop there.
No, he tracked down the store owner, who confirmed that the Reeds had bought extensive items for a 6-year-old girl. This is direct proof that Caroline Toomey was recently captive there. But what's even more tragic is the reveal of the Reeds' motivation. It ties back perfectly to the economic violence of gentrification.
So how did Benjamin compel them to take part in this horrifying exchange?
Elaine Reed was desperate. She had been caught stealing 24 vials of insulin from a local pharmacy, Healthwise, in Hobbs County. She needed it for her own young son, Patrick, who is also a diabetic.
Oh, wow.
And Benjamin, knowing her desperation and her vulnerability, he approached her with a truly twisted deal.
The transactional exchange.
Yes. Benjamin offered her this. You take this young girl, Caroline, for a few years. You essentially babysit her while her memory is being chemically stolen. But in exchange, Elaine's own family would be safe and provided for in the newly cleansed community.
So he weaponized her desperation, her fear for her own diabetic son.
To make her complicit in the abduction of another mother's child, she made the choice to save Patrick at Caroline's expense.
The machine operates by exploiting the deepest fears of the most vulnerable people in the old Hobbs County. But the threads lead much, much higher than a desperate mother and an ex-con. They lead directly to the true master of this machine. Senator Gray Talbot.
Talbot's personal intervention is the first major clue. He personally visited Henry's editor, Wallace Langston, demanding that the investigation into Michelle Oliveira be shut down. That level of personal, aggressive pressure from a sitting senator over a single missing persons cold case
Yep.
It's utterly extraordinary. It immediately signals his complicity.
And then Henry found the financial trail that cemented Talbot's guilt, exposing the quid pro quo that funded the entire gentrification project.
The records showed a yearly influx of $50,000 paid directly to Talbot from a company called Shepherd Incorporated.
A shell company.
A shell company, a layer of protection which was owned by Reggie Powers of Powers Construction. Powers was Talbot's key contractor, the man who was awarded all the massive rebuilding contracts for the Hobbs County revitalization.
So let's connect the financial dots here for the listener.
Okay.
Talbot leverages the high crime rate, which was engineered by the kidnappings, to secure millions in state funding for cleansing Hobbs County.
Right.
Powers Construction gets the contract, ensuring the gentrification happens fast. And Talbot gets $50,000 a year funneled through a shell company as a kickback, ensuring his personal finances remain healthy, and maybe more importantly, he gets a brand new, wealthy, grateful voting bloc.
It's a perfect, self-sustaining political machine run on stolen lives and public money. The only problem was the loose ends. Reggie Powers, who is described in the sources as having a good heart, he became compromised by his involvement. He knew too much. Like Petrovsky, he was deemed a liability and was murdered by Benjamin or those working under Talbot to tie up the conspiracy's loose ends permanently.
The level of ruthless efficiency is just astounding. And when Henry finally corners Talbot, the senator offers a chilling, extremist justification for his entire scheme.
Talbot's motive wasn't simply raw greed. It was leveraging engineered tragedy to secure political power and reshape the social fabric. He used the kidnappings to draw massive attention to crime, secure funding, gentrify towns like Hobbs and Meriden, and thereby cultivate a wealthier, more affluent voting constituency who would be perpetually grateful for the peace he delivered.
And his philosophy is the ultimate corruption of utilitarianism.
He fully embraces the idea that the ends justify the means. He minimized the suffering, claiming the children only lost a couple years of their lives, but returned to safer, better communities. He called it a small sacrifice for a lifetime of happiness.
A small sacrifice.
For not only the children, but for the thousands of residents of Hobbs County. He saw the children as necessary, temporary martyrs for social uplift, viewing their trauma as mere arithmetic in a political equation.
This justification is terrifying because it attempts to rationalize an unimaginable crime as a public service.
And that brings us to the most heartbreaking piece of the puzzle, the Linwood family's involvement. Henry secures Shelley Linwood's full confession, and it reveals the true depth of the societal breakdown Talbot was exporting.
Tell us about that confrontation between Shelley and Benjamin.
Shelley confessed that Raymond Benjamin approached her first. He showed her a photograph of her younger son, James, in his little knapsack and baggy jeans, just demonstrating precisely how vulnerable James was to the omnipresent crime and violence of the old Hobbs County. That was the weapon. Fear.
And then he offered the deal.
He offered the deal. Daniel would be taken away for a few years, safe, protected, and healthy, and the rest of the family, James and Tasha, would be guaranteed safety forever in the newly rebuilt Hobbs County.
She was given an impossible choice. Near certain violence for all her children in the old town, or the guaranteed trauma of one child for the safety of the rest.
And Shelley admitted she believed Daniel would be a hero. She rationalized that he was giving his life, or rather 5 years of his life and his memories, for the future of his siblings. She just wanted her sons to have something better, even at this unthinkable cost. The sources emphasize the crushing weight of that choice, showing that Talbot's political machine was so comprehensive it even secured the complicity of the victims' own families by preying on their desperation.
That makes the return not a miracle, but a payment.
It is the ultimate payment for the stability of a wealthy, secure town.
As the criminal conspiracy unravels, Segment 4 really highlights the intense personal cost borne by those chasing the truth, especially Henry Parker and his very complicated relationship with Amanda Davies.
Amanda's involvement was vital. She risked her career at the Legal Aid Society by accessing and providing Henry with the protected Michelle Oliveira files, a move that directly triggered Talbot's threats against Henry's editor. Her professional risk was massive.
But the personal risk, given her history with Henry, was even greater.
Absolutely. The sources detail this huge rift between them. While the chaos of the investigation throws Henry and Amanda back together and it leads to an undeniable rekindling of feelings, Amanda holds firm on maintaining her distance.
She confronts Henry about their past relationship, doesn't she?
She does. She reminds him that he previously ended things because he feared the danger his job brought after she was nearly killed in incidents connected to his reporting. She brings up specific examples, the threats, the near misses that defined the collateral damage of Henry's career.
And she refuses to be drawn back into that vortex of danger and control.
Exactly. Amanda agrees to help only as friends, stating emphatically, "You decided to make my choice for me," referring to the previous breakup. She refuses to be put in a situation where someone dictates her future without her say-so. She's maintaining her personal agency despite Henry's desperate realization that his feelings for her are clearer than ever, spurred by the chaos of the investigation. She needs to know she controls her own risk assessment.
So even as Henry closes in on the biggest story of his career, his personal life is fracturing over the very nature of that career. And meanwhile, the journalistic world Henry inhabits is collapsing around him, catalyzed by his rival Paulina Cole.
Cole, in her ruthless pursuit of the Dispatch's dominance over the Gazette, she executes this brutal, targeted takedown of Henry's idol and mentor, Jack O'Donnell.
Jack O'Donnell was a legendary columnist representing the old guard of integrity, but he was struggling terribly with severe alcoholism.
And Cole didn't just write a story. She conducted a months-long, meticulous investigation into his private life just to assassinate his character.
How did she do it?
She used the most brutal form of competitive journalism. She hired a porter to collect and fingerprint hundreds of Jack's empty liquor bottles from his condo over a period of a year. She confirmed his extreme consumption, noting there were several hundred bottles consumed by him alone. She used forensic detail to prove his addiction.
And her ultimate scoop was an article in the Dispatch titled, "A Lush Life, Jack O'Donnell and All the Booze That's Fit to Print." The story wasn't just about his drinking, was it?
No, it was a comprehensive destruction of his professional reputation. It included a secretly taken photo of Jack unconscious in a hospital bed with tubes attached. A photo taken after Henry himself had rushed him there for alcohol poisoning.
Vicious.
The article didn't stop at the addiction. It painstakingly listed every single correction Jack had made over the previous year, portraying him as a man whose integrity and professional life were just ruined by his dependency.
This wasn't just news. It was a scorched earth campaign designed to hurt Henry's paper.
And it was devastatingly effective. The immediate consequence: the Gazette's owner, Harvey Hillerman, had no choice but to force Jack into an extended leave or termination. This wasn't just the end of a column, it was the collapse of the paper's old guard, clearing the way for a new, more cynical, and utterly ruthless style of journalism epitomized by Cole.
It's a bitter collateral casualty of the information war. Talbot was aiming at Henry through threats, but Cole delivered a fatal career-ending blow to Henry's mentor simply to gain an advantage.
This entire investigation, from the high politics of Talbot to the low blows of Cole, lays bare not just political corruption, but the moral compromises made at every single level: familial, political, and journalistic. So let's take a step back from the raw shock of these revelations and really synthesize what Henry Parker's deep dive ultimately revealed to us.
I think the core takeaway has to be the chilling concept of politically weaponized crime. Talbot didn't just stumble across crime and exploit it. He arguably engineered the conditions necessary for the transformation of Hobbs County and Meriden by ensuring these high-profile kidnappings occurred.
Right.
He stole individual lives, their memories, and their traumas, purely to create a massive societal uplift and secure overwhelming political capital.
And that engineered trauma leads us back to the most difficult moral calculus of the entire narrative: Shelley Linwood's justification. We have to genuinely grapple with her choice. Was Daniel's sacrifice, losing 5 years of memory and having his identity chemically altered through thiamine deprivation, was it truly worth guaranteeing his younger siblings a safer community, a better life, free from the statistical terror of the old Hobbs County?
It forces us, and you as a listener, to try and weigh the acute personalized trauma of 3 stolen children: Daniel Linwood, Michelle Oliveira, and Caroline Toomey, against the documented, life-altering improvement in quality of life for 1,000 residents who no longer fear murder or rape or home invasion.
Talbot believed this improved, stable town was absolutely worth the price. He embodied the ultimate cold corruption of the utilitarian philosophy, where the greatest good for the greatest number is achieved through the destruction of the few. He secured peace by guaranteeing pain.
And central to this entire monstrous operation was the absolute power of controlling information at every single phase.
You see it at three distinct levels. Talbot controlled the narrative, the heroic savior who brought peace and prosperity. Benjamin controlled the evidence, using extreme violence, murder, and fire to wipe the slate clean of any physical proof of the operation.
And Paulina Cole, ironically, controlled the media focus. She assassinated Jack O'Donnell's character and distracted the Gazette with internal strife, preventing them from chasing the deeper implications of the corruption. Even the Linwood family, by agreeing to the silence, helped manage the narrative of the joyous, miraculous return, preventing anyone from questioning the deeper truth.
It was a perfectly designed machine built to profit from desperation and silence. In the end, Daniel Linwood came home to a rebuilt, safer house located in a gentrified and dramatically less violent town. But he paid for that safety with 5 years of his childhood memories, sacrificed by his own mother to a corrupt political machine that weaponized his diabetes.
This leaves us with the truly provocative thought, something that runs through the sources and was first suggested to Henry by the cab driver, Stavros, when they drove into the newly polished Hobbs County. Henry commented on the town being different now, safer, cleaner.
And Stavros replied with that perfect phrase, "New coat of paint, same cracked wood underneath."
Yeah.
If a community's improvement is based entirely on engineered tragedy, stolen lives, and ethical compromise, can that peace truly last? Or is the poison, the cracked wood of corruption and ethical compromise that began this entire story, still deep within the foundations of the perfect town? It's a fundamental question about the integrity of the ground beneath our feet.